in the upcoming biennium. Of course, that includes the county priority projects, as well as important projects in the high-growth areas, the counties, to keep moving our economic needle forward in building a better Kentucky. Safety is the top priority as we implement other legislation from this year's session as well. So we continue to work through nearly 24 pieces of legislation that are one way or another related to transportation, highways, drivers, and vehicle operations. Of course, it's still early in that process, but for every topic that we have been tasked with, we are working on them vigorously, earnestly. We are meeting internally with the appropriate stakeholders and the subject matter experts, as they say, to draft regulations to be ready to get the work done. And we are making good and healthy progress as we approach the new fiscal year and the July 15th effective date for bills. Safety is also a priority as we continue to improve our vehicle information system known as KAVIS. KAVIS replaces, as you know, a 45-year-old mainframe system used by county clerks for motor vehicle and vessel-related transactions that was difficult to support and maintain. And that's to say it modestly, right, Heather? We're going to hear more from Heather in just a minute. The new system better protects the 250 million vehicle records that we must keep updated in Kentucky, and it better performs the functions a 21st century enterprise needs to work efficiently. As I've already mentioned, I'm joined today by our Office of Information Technology Director, Heather Stout, and Heather will give us an update on the tremendous strides her team has made this year. She'll also recognize the challenges. But before I turn it over to Heather, I want to thank you all for the work that you are doing to keep not just Kentuckians, but our KYTC, our transportation team, safer on our highways. The legislature's attention to work zone safety. Chairman Blanton, I know that's something that you're very interested in, and so others on the committee. You helped champion that cause this past session. It included several bills that protect workers. Workers like Blake Barnes, who tragically lost his life just 6 weeks ago today. This young man was only 22. He was a young volunteer firefighter, a young husband, and the father of 2, with 1 on the way. And he was struck down in a highway work zone in Hart County. I sat there with his family in the funeral home, along with 30 of his co-workers from Highway Districts 4 and 5. We went to the graveside ceremony as well. And all of our team members were wearing high vis, his wife included. I thought of the many things that we have done, that we are doing, to protect Kentucky's public servants on the front lines, and I thought of more as well. But I've thought of things that we're doing, like better signage and crash cushion trucks, and the new legislation that reinforces the move over or slow down law for work crews, emergency responders, and citizens disabled on the side of the road. And I'm thankful for new legislation that amends current law to increase fines and to put teeth into reckless driving in work zones. In addition to fines of $500 or more, drivers now face having their license revoked for violations in work zones. We want everyone to go home safely at the end of their workday. And these changes will help us achieve that goal, all of us. So thank you for your attention to that issue and for your hard work making these legislative changes a reality. It will save lives. But we cannot forget Blake Barnes. More needs to be done for him and for others in our work zones. More must be done to protect Kentuckians, and I urge you to work on that with us. So now I will turn it over to another important project, and that's KAVIS. As I said, Heather Stout and her team have worked long hours before and after the system's January launch to execute the project and troubleshoot in real time. We recognize the impact issues have had on the public, and we're here to say performance has improved significantly. We recognize the challenge that is represented to the clerks. And leading this KAVIS charge is Heather. She has displayed extraordinary leadership and dedication throughout the whole project. And I say routinely that she is one of these public servants and leaders that the private sector would take any day of the week. Her responsiveness and management skills are second to none. She's a known innovator, was just recently recognized by Government Magazine as an innovator, and specializes in solving problems while keeping her cool. So I'll turn it over to Heather now. Now you got to prove everything I said was right.
Thank you, Secretary Gray. Okay, I want to do a quick recap on an overview of KAVIS. As we said in the January 30th meeting, largest modernization in Kentucky's history, a generational change to process for the public and the clerks and technology, 250 plus million records migrated, 45 years of code modernized, an impact to every single vehicle boat owner in the state. All related vehicle and tax legislation was reviewed and incorporated into this new system, and it has a vast user base. I think I've heard from all of them in the past few months of MVL, clerks, PVAs, law enforcement, dealer commission, dealers, and on and on and on and on. So just a quick recap on the magnitude of this system. I then want to follow with some comparisons and where we are with collections. So in AVIS in 2023, we collected, at this point, same time period, $646 million. In 2024, same time period, $656 million. Number of checkouts, that just means the number of transactions going through the system, 1.7 million in 2023, 1.8 in 2024. And then my favorite part is past due date ad valorem collection. Around 84 million was collected this time last year, and right now we're at 98 million. So a little over 14 million additional in ad valorem collected. So really by the end of the year, this system will have returned on its investment, which is a really great success metric. However, having said all that, as you know, you've heard about the challenges. There are still challenges, and there are things that we're still working to improve upon, and we still want to minimize frustrations that some of the clerks are still having. So this process continues. We have migrated, as you know, in January we were doing daily releases. The team was working 80 plus hours a week, and we've migrated to a much more stable state at this point. We're doing 2-week releases, and we're definitely seeing a change in the type of support requests and phone calls. They're much more repetitive because it's very narrowed issues at this point, or they're issues with the data that we're seeing that needs to be tweaked, something that migrated that another vehicle came in that had some kind of an issue and we got to fix it. So there's a lot more specific and much more tailored support requests coming in than what we were seeing in January. Some counties have adapted to KAVIS very well and are helping others around them learn the new processes and train. That's working out really well. Converting from that vehicle-centric model to the customer-centric model definitely continues to be a challenge. It's a complete mindset change. So what we're seeing for newer resources to the clerk's offices, they're picking it up just like that because they don't have any preconceived ideas of what it should be. So they're really, and some of the clerks have told me that it helps them seeing this new person come in and get it so easily because they realize, okay, I can get there over time. So that's been really interesting to hear. There is definitely still frustration in some of the clerks' offices. Many of them are seeing vast improvements, and there is no comparison to where we were January 30th to where we are today. But there's still room for improvement. Of course, I'll say there will always be room for improvement. Even with AVIS, we had room for improvement, right? So, but there's definitely areas where we want to see much more efficient processes come to fruition in KAVIS. So we are working on those things. In order to identify those things, we're ramping back up our office visits and trying to go see frontline what are the clerks experiencing and what are truly their most high priority issues. You know, we can sit behind our desk and do work and think that we know what the high priority issues are, but until you get down there and you really see, okay, this is what's holding them up the most throughout the day and see it firsthand, that's where you can really identify what the priorities should be and how is that going to impact the bigger volume of people in the state instead of this one county's complaining about this one issue. We want to get the biggest bang for our buck and make sure we're focusing on the bigger issues. So we've visited Jefferson, Anderson, and Grant. We're doing some follow-ups with Jefferson as well because they're a very big operation. We will also be following up with Grant, scheduling Fayette County, and then we're going to be doing some firsthand experience work in motor vehicle licensing in the rebuilt branch in the coming weeks. So some of the things that we'll be working on from a priority standpoint over the next few months, really for the remainder of the year. And there will be additional things that get added in here, but this is really where our priorities lie. Bulk transactions, that's been one of the biggest issues that we've seen in Jefferson County. Their volume is just a massive amount of vehicles and large corporations. And those transactions that are 5,000 plus in one transaction are not as efficient as they need to be. We're putting a lot of emphasis on that to help them make some vast improvements there, and it's desperately needed. The legislative updates that we have on our plate from 24, but also from previous years that are coming due towards the end of the year or in January. KYELT, electronic lien and titling, which I'll talk about a little bit later and give you guys an update on that because I know that's requested. Fleet management, which was also a part of that same bill. And then some of the 2024 legislation, 10,000 pound plate moving from March to birth month, electric vehicles incorporated into KAVIS, autonomous vehicles, a flag in the system and printing on the title, and then a reinstatement fee for canceled registration. So those are some of the things coming. We also plan to continue to improve our reporting, data cleanup. That's going to happen all year. As more people come through to get their registrations renewed throughout the year, we're going to see additional issues that come a part of that from their data and have to run some scripts to clean some things up. And then enhancements in speed and efficiency. This is one of the big things that I think, while we still have a few issues in the system, there's more advantage, I think, in working on the speed and efficiency. How do we help the clerks do these processes faster? They can do the transactions, but some of them are requiring additional steps that if we can take those things out, it's going to further help them do these things more quickly. So just wanted to highlight some of the big data cleanup issues that we have done over the past few months, ad valorem, particularly with PVA issues and data issues. So PVA issues, we have a term in the system called PVA issue, and if it comes up and it says PVA issue, everybody assumes it's PVA. In most cases, there is something the PVA has to do to resolve that. In some cases, it's not. And it's something the clerk can resolve, or in some cases, it's something the KAVIS team has to fix. But we have cleaned out over 500,000 of those. Some of those where there was no activity, there was no reason to continue to have that tax segment on that record. If it was a dealer or insurance company and they should have been bypassed, those things have been corrected. If the vehicle was canceled, junked, or sold out of state prior to a certain year, there was no reason to have those tax segments still on there. And then vehicles surrendered in that same status. So we've talked through a lot of these with DOR over the past few months, made rules. The team wrote scripts to clean those things up, and we wiped them out of the system so that the clerks didn't run into those stops. And then data scripts run to date. We've done over 550 scripts. Some of those could be one time for one vehicle, or they could be a bulk group for a script that was written to cover an entire body of work if we found consistency in a problem. 554 sounds like a lot. Of course, when you're talking about 250,000 records migrated, I guess it's 250 million records migrated, 554 is not too many. But as I said, some of those are for groups of data. Some of that was legacy data issues that we had to clean up some of those PVA issues, of course, and then just removing impediments for the clerk to process work. There have been cases where the clerk or MVL has tried to work through a problem in KAVIS and it's actually caused a bigger problem and we had to go and clean it up from a data perspective. That's more minor than the others, but it does happen and we have to kind of research and figure out how did they do that and get through that. So that is something that we've been working on. Hold on just a second. Okay, actually, I want to come back to KYELT and go ahead and go straight into rebuilt titles. On rebuilt titles, so during this past 5 months, we had a significant backlog of regular titles, and that has significantly reduced. I think we were around 72,000 titles in the backlog at one point, and we're now down to 16, which is well under the statutory requirement. We get about 5,000 or 6,000 a day. So we did a lot of things to work on process and data cleanup and procedures for approving titles to really streamline that process and make that a much more quick process to get a title approved. We are now focusing on rebuilt titles, and rebuilt titles are much more complex. They require receipts and pictures, and some of you may be more familiar with rebuilts than others, but we want to make sure those vehicles are built back correctly and safely before they're put out on the road. And that takes a lot more in-depth knowledge and skills to make sure that those are safe and approved to be considered a rebuilt vehicle that's approved to be titled. Currently, they're working on the 2nd to 3rd week of March. So that's about 6 weeks behind. I think statutorily they need to be around 5 to 7 days. I'm not 100% certain that. I think it might be 5. So we're working on those processes to figure out how do we improve that to get them down to the correct amount of days that they're allowed to have to prove these titles. MVL has hired 4 more resources. The training is a little bit more in depth, so that's taking a little bit of time to get them ramped up. We are working on a couple of KAVIS updates that's going to help some of the approval processes, and those are going in effective June 13th, that evening. And we're trying to find a way to help the staff spend less time answering inquiries. So we get a lot of inquiries on where's my approval, and that takes away from actually doing the approvals. So we're starting to give more information to the clerks on where are we with the dates of approvals, so they can help answer those questions when they get them, and they don't have to come to MVL and take that staff time who needs to be focused on actually doing the reviews. So there's a lot of little process changes we're trying to look through. I will say the staffing shortages are quite a bit attributed to the fact that rebuilt applications have increased significantly in the past 5 years. A lot of surrounding states are no longer doing rebuilt titles, so we get a lot of business from external. So you see 120% increase in the last 5 years and about a 65% increase just last year. So it was time to increase the staff. Maybe should have done that prior to KAVIS rolling out, but right now that's what's happening, and I think we're gonna start seeing a decrease very soon. So let me step back to the electronic lien and titling. So this schedule, and I'm sorry I hope you guys have a copy of it because I know it's a little small. This schedule is something we put together when this bill was first passed as a tentative plan for how we would accommodate this while also trying to accommodate the rollout of KAVIS. I would never suggest doing two things of this magnitude at the same time. But that's where we are. So we've done the best we can to try to meet this schedule and keep this rollout going while also doing the KAVIS stabilization. It has caused some challenges, though, as clerks are still learning KAVIS. They don't necessarily want to adopt a new thing at this time, and we're trying to encourage that they do that. So all the check marks here are things we have accomplished on this schedule. We have a vendor. We've communicated the plans. We've developed the application for an approved entity. We already have some entities, and that's dealers or financial institutions approved. I think just dealers right now. And we have designed the new fleet plate that was part of this same bill. We have introduced the vendor and the program to the county clerks. And the biggest thing that we've done is piloted. So we've started piloting. We're in 7 counties. And actually, we're in 5 counties. We've got 2 more coming on board next Monday. The pilot has been very successful, in my opinion. So the 5 counties that have started doing this process to electronically submit their dealer paperwork have really found some issues, and we've been able to correct those things so that it doesn't impact everyone. So we've made workflow process changes. We've ensured that any documents that are getting scanned in are actually getting into the KAVIS image repository. We've separated fees more appropriately, and we're working on updating some reports so that the clerks are able to balance more easily each day. Because that's something they have to do daily. We want it to be as efficient as possible. So the purpose of the pilot being to find the issues before you roll out statewide, and that's exactly what the pilot's done. And there's still more being changed. We do have Franklin and Anderson coming online on Monday, as I said. And we're going to be expanding to more types of transactions. So right now we're limiting this pilot to standard issue plates. We're going to be expanding to all special plates, which will really help the dealers not have to pick through which ones they can and can't do, among other things. Now the big things that are coming up, and I included in our kind of 6-month plan, is integrating with KAVIS. So right now, the clerk is still having to manually enter their data into KAVIS from this electronic lien and titling system. And we knew that we did that purposefully because we couldn't pull the KAVIS team off to do this integration during the middle of implementation. So that planning is starting in the next week on integrating with KAVIS, which will help the clerks with that step in the process, and I think further drive adoption from the clerks. That process will also start the conversation on centralized lien management and then lien filing and releases. So all of these things, I think you asked for an electronic lien and titling update and a centralized lien management update. Those 2 projects are dependent upon one another. So I don't really see them as separate efforts. In order to allow automated lien filing and release as part of the electronic lien and titling system, we have to have a centralized lien management system. So we're currently, and right now I will say the challenge with that is that in all counties there's a different process for how they handle lien management in their office. Some of them have back-end systems from different vendors that they do their liens in, and some don't. And we have to really think through what are all those processes and then create a centralized lien management to-be process. What is it going to be, the consistent process across the state? I think the technology behind this is going to be the simple part in comparison to let's define what the new process is. So that's where we're at right now. Those conversations are starting this week on really thinking about, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about lien management, but really thinking about what the to-be process is. The other key component of this bill was fleet plates with permanent registration. Those conversations have only started at a very high level, but we're working on trying to get that understood better so that we can get that implemented before the end of the year as well. So those are all things coming in the next 6 months. I know it sounds simple, but we're going to get there. We're going to do our best to meet those dates and make all this truly a fairly streamlined process for the clerks and dealerships. I think that's all I have. but I am ready to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Stout, not just for today, but for all those times when I call and you're willing to help. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I would agree with the comments you had about Ms. Stout. She's doing a great job with a monumental task.
Thank you.
I would say let's keep in mind we're 5 full months now into a brand new system that's replaced a system that's been in place more than 2 decades. Mm-hmm. It takes time. It's impossible to know every scenario and situation. Humans can't do that, right? So we look forward to continue the progress. I know later in the summer, the clerks will be coming and talking about some of the issues. I'm sure that you or a representative will be here to take note, maybe to respond. Yeah. But thank you for always responding when we've called. And appreciate all the hard work that you and your team has put into this effort. I know when it does finally get somewhat normalized, change is a big disruptor to people, isn't it? Yeah. Even though change is the biggest constant in our life, it's the one thing we hate more than anything is change. So that's a lot of it is that. I will ask one question before I turn it over to members dealing with the KAVIS part, and don't want to get you into another project to be going on, but or the real-time insurance part that connects in, what's kind of the status there?
So we've been contacted to start reviewing some legislation on that. I think it was past legislation, maybe to just start the conversation again. The insurance component of the system is still on the mainframe. That's the only remaining piece on the mainframe. So we certainly want to modernize that and get off the mainframe. And the ideal solution would be to hire a vendor that would handle all of the books of business, create that real-time service for us to be able to query for insurance. So it's certainly on the pipeline. I don't have any, I'm not going to give a date because I have no idea what that would take, but it's certainly on a vision that we have and plan to do. Thank you.
And one other quick thing before I get to other members, Mr. Secretary, I want to get back to your work zone safety comments. Saddened by the tragic loss of this young man, father to be. And you have my commitment that we continue working to find ways to improve our work zone safeties for individuals like him. I think I have a pretty good piece of legislation that would go a long way in helping with that. And I hope, as sad a situation as it is, that it highlights the need for something like my legislation does. Because the whole thing we want to do is slow traffic down in these work zones. Not just for the safety of the workers, but for the safety of other people traveling in them. And the type of legislation that we've been working on has proven to be effective in other states in doing just that. And I think we owe it to this young man's memory to continue working on with that. So with that, I'm going to move on to questions. Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary, thank you for coming today. Executive Director, I appreciate your testimony. You hit on many things. I'm primarily having issues that are rebuilt titles for my constituents. I had a gentleman in Clay that had some issues a few months ago, and of course, you know, like the chairman said, it's a monumental undertaking on what you all are doing, and I appreciate that. However, myself and Vice Chair Storm have a constituent in our area in London, Kentucky, who has had several issues with backlog titles, and these aren't cheap vehicles by any means. This guy here, he has several 2021 Chevy trucks, and he's actually having to buy these vehicles back, so it's affecting his business, affecting his cash flow. So I am appreciative of the fact that you are making efforts to correct these issues and streamline processes. So I guess it's a two-part question. My first being, when do you anticipate being caught up? I know you said there's a backlog going back to March currently.
Well, I may have to pull, do you guys have an idea of your time frame on when you'll have those resources trained?
Generally doing 3 days.
Okay. So right now they're doing about 3 days worth of rebuilt titles every 2 days. So based on the current volume of staff, it's going to take a while to get caught up. However, with the training of the new 4 resources, I think we'll be able to speed that up quite a bit. I can't really give you a time frame right now. They're 6 weeks behind. I would hope that in about 3 weeks we can make a big dent in some of that and see where we are and maybe provide an update.
Thank you. And then, Chairman, if you'll indulge me.
Just 1 second. For the record, and the answer came from, you want to come to the table? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just state your name so we've got it for the record.
My name is Eddie Pagan. I'm the branch manager for registrations and motor vehicle licensing, and the rebuilt section is under my branch.
All right, thank you. All right, Representative Lewis, continue.
Thank you, Eddie, for that answer. For those of us that do have constituents having issues, would it be all right to reach out to your all's office and point those out? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Representative
You can call me
Huff.
directly, or you can call our office, either one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a little confused about a comment you made. You said that the rebuilds are more complicated because you want to make sure they're safe for the road. I was thinking that was the sheriff's job to inspect the vehicles and make sure they're safe. So shouldn't that have already been done before the paperwork gets to you?
Well, I may have misstated. They do have to verify that all the receipts and the pictures match and correlate with the title application. Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing the sheriff is inspecting is just the VIN number of the odometer.
Well, no, they inspect quite a bit more than that.
I mean, he's not doing a mechanical inspection.
Yeah, but I mean, lights, glass, seat belts, horn, signals. I mean, they inspect quite a bit. May I have a follow-up also?
Yes.
Is the goal when KAVIS is fully operational to be as good as Avis was, or is it going to be better? Or because right now it's way behind. And I was just wondering, before we could get a approval in about 5 to 7 days. I don't know if it was going to be better than that or just as good or.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously the goal is for it to be better, right? We certainly don't accept that it's 6 weeks behind, right, in approvals. The challenges that we had initially in KAVIS not being able to accept rebuilt titles was resolved within a few weeks. That created a backlog of work that has been difficult to overcome. So that's why we're working to improve those processes. But yes, of course, we want to make sure that the process is at least as good as, if not better.
Okay, just one more thing.
Quickly.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're at least 6 weeks because I've got vehicles that are back in April. So that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Senator Storm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments go hand in hand with what Representative Lewis asked a moment ago, but what I'm looking at here is documentation from January 19th of 24 regarding this particular vehicle, and they had applied for a unrebuildable red title, and what came back on several occasions was the incorrect blue title. And so after that was corrected by the sheriff's inspection, after it was corrected by the local county clerk, they're still told that this can't be accomplished. And so now they've had to purchase back this vehicle as recently as today. And again, I've got the documentation here in my hand.
I'd love to have that.
I'll share it
So
with you.
we can research that and identify what happened.
And so the question becomes, are there other areas that you're having difficulties with other than these rebuilt titles? Are there issues with titles going missing or a failure to mail out the titles?
No, I've not heard of any issues with titles going missing. Now, we have had returned titles from an address situation. That's not abnormal. There are titles that often get returned to motor vehicle licensing due to an apartment number being missing or something along those lines that has resulted in that title being returned.
Yes, one follow-up. Have you experienced any situations where individuals would perhaps pay for the titles to be sent to them, and then you are requiring them to file for a duplicate title even though the initial title's never been mailed to them?
That is not a scenario that I've heard.
Okay.
That may be happening. I just haven't heard about it. So if you do have an example, I would love to be able to research it.
I've got some of those as well.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Representative Hodgson.
Yes, could you tell me, was KAVIS custom built for Kentucky, or was it an adaptation of another off-the-shelf system?
Custom built for Kentucky. We had attempted three previous times with vendors to use an off-the-shelf solution and modify it for Kentucky. All failed. So we made the decision to custom build in-house.
Okay, this insurance question Representative Blanton brought up, was that in scope of this project? That
No, I don't believe so. I don't think insurance
Okay.
was in scope initially.
So I have constituents that had trouble with a letter saying they're going to cancel their registration because of proof of insurance, and there's something about the formatting of the data from his insurance carrier not. Is that typical of the problem we're having?
Yeah,
here?
that's been an issue ongoing, even when in Avis. We sent out insurance notices a few weeks ago. Their insurance isn't being canceled yet, but they've got to clean up whatever problem it is if they do have insurance. So they've been contacting the clerks and getting things cleaned up. We are at the discretion of the insurance companies to send us their full books of business with the correct data. And if there is an incorrect VIN in some of their information, we get that, and then it causes issues down the line. So I don't know that there's anything from a system perspective we could necessarily do to prevent that, but we're constantly trying to improve that when it occurs, and we see certain insurance companies that have more problems than others. We reach out to Department of Insurance, have them contact them, and ask them to improve.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Representative Upchurch.
Thank you. Just kind of going along with Representative Huff's comments on the sheriff's inspections. I know we passed House Bill 833 just this past session. Can you kind of tell me what the status of that is? How that's going to work with KAVIS, with the sheriff's inspection? The electronic vehicle inspection with the sheriffs, have you gotten a platform for that? Vendors, kind of what's your timeline, what you expect on that as far as getting that up and running? That will help speed up, I think, the inspection process on these vehicles. Has there been any work done on that thus far?
We are completely overhauling the sheriff's inspection system right now. Currently, and I'm not sure, this is about appointing other officers to do vehicle inspections. So the system that we're redoing, it will impact that some. And I don't have enough understanding of exactly what that House bill was after to be able to tell you for sure. But I can tell you we're overhauling the sheriff's inspection system. The certification process for inspectors will change and be much more streamlined, getting their certificates, getting renewed, and all of that, which has been a challenge over the years. It will also enable a electronic means for doing the inspections rather than it being via paper to prevent fraud. So that project is also going on right now as well. I expect it'll be implemented sometime this year.
Okay. And I'll just add as a comment, I think all of us in here, we hear from these rebuilders quite frequently.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's people's livelihoods at stake here. When someone has to wait 6 weeks, 2 months on a vehicle and have to buy $50-something thousand pickup truck back, you know, that's not what we're in the business to be doing. And so I think we need to really redouble our efforts. If it's taken 3 days or 2 days to get 3 days work, you know, the private sector, you know, we work doing 2 days work in 1 day. So I'd encourage you to figure out, even if you've got to add more people to staff, but this is one of those situations where we need all hands on deck as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Completely understand. Thank you.
Senator Berg.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. And my question really is, doesn't have much to do with any of it. It has more to do with a safety issue. I had a speeding ticket a while back, right down the street from my home, in what is supposed to be a 55-mile-an-hour zone. And so I have been trying desperately since that speeding ticket to go 55 miles an hour and to listen to the law. And this is just on a little stretch of 71 between like 264 and Zorn Avenue in Louisville. And the aggressiveness of the drivers around me when I am trying to stick to the speed limit on that stretch is getting to the point where I sort of want to start recording it. It's not safe. So I'm letting you know we either need to do a better job with our signage or a better job with what our actual speed limits are, or the message has to be not just slow down in work zones, but guys, know what the speed limit is and listen to it. Because I'm having trucks trying to push me off because they think I'm going too slow. Point.
We appreciate everything you're saying about safety and about these speed limits and the enforcement issues associated with them.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Thank you. Actually, my question has been asked and answered. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Heverin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions, but I'll be brief if that's okay. My first question is, you said it was in-house, the KAVIS system. Is that with COT or is that with Kentucky Interactive?
No, that's with Transportation Cabinet. We hired a team of resources 7-8 years ago to start that effort, to start all of the different KAVIS projects that have been implemented since that time.
Okay.
So they all report to me.
Okay. I was going to be greatly concerned if it was COT or Kentucky Interactive, because we're having issues with KREF, which is our campaign finance, and that's been a struggle for several years. So I just want to make sure it was separate entities. And then I have one more question. Much like most of my colleagues have said, there's a lot of concern with the rebuilt titles, and it's people's money, it's people's livelihood. You all had mentioned that you all have hired 4 more additional people to help with that. Do you all plan on, are they working 8 to 4? Are you all giving them separate hours to be able to work longer? I asked that question. I previously worked at the state treasury and dealt with unclaimed property, so I understand it's a little different because your unclaimed property is not really your livelihood, but making sure that you get out of a backlog. And so what are you all doing other than additionally hiring 4 people to make sure to get out of that backlog? Are they working longer hours? Are there different shifts? Any help on that would be grateful.
Yeah, so the 4 resources that MVL is hiring will be normal workday, 8 to 4. However, as we've done with regular titles, we have changed processes, allowed overtime, Saturday work, and different things to get caught up on the backlog. And once that catches up, then it kind of migrates back to a normal procedure. So all of those things will be in play.
Thank you.
And just to give a plug to COT and Kentucky Interactive for the Transportation Cabinet, COT has been instrumental in helping us implement the KAVIS system, and we interface with Kentucky Interactive daily on so many projects, and they've been really great for transportation. So I have heard other complaints from other agencies, but I just want to say they've both been a great help in getting KAVIS off the beaten path.
I appreciate that. And can I have a follow-up comment, Mr. Chairman, just to you?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to request if we could get monthly updates of where they are on the KAVIS update. I think that would be helpful for us and our constituents, and making sure we can provide the right education to them and let them know that you are working diligently to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mills.
Yes, I've got a titling question. I think I may have heard you just barely glance over this in your presentation, but just to help me know where we're at on this. So there's entities that have multiple accounts under AVIS over time, and that causes inconsistency when you're trying to do the title work. So is there an effort to get these entities with different names, slight misspellings, addresses, to put those together to where are you working on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Right now, there is a very robust customer merge process that the county clerks are capable of doing, merging or unmerging records to get each of us an individual record in the system. I know I was in there 4 times myself and had to be merged together to create one record. That is coming for organizations. So it is definitely there for customers, but then for dealerships or any other business organization that have multiple out there, we're working on that organizational merge process. So yes, that is coming. It's a little more complex because you can't. What do you match them against? You want them all to have the same FEIN, for instance, but they might have 15 different addresses or 100 different addresses in the system. So how do you really? We're trying to figure out how the best way to make sure we merge those correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the effort's ongoing.
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Stout, thank you again for your work and dedication to this project. You are moving forward and making progress each day. And we look forward to continuing to not only see the progress being made, but to hear back from you as we move through the interim. As I said earlier, we will have some of the clerks in later in the summer. And we appreciate you coming, taking the time out of your day, and doing such a thorough presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, as always, for your work and all your staff's work over the Transportation Cabinet.
Can I say one thing just as a footnote?
You may, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to refer back to Chairman Upchurch's question about House Bill 833, just to reassure you and punctuate that we are working to promulgate regs associated with it. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all. And before we adjourn, members, because is our last testimony, I will, just for informational purposes only, remind you that in your packets there is a memo from the Department of Revenue regarding changes in the fuel tax rate for the next fiscal year, and it's because of changes in the average wholesale price of gasoline. So that's just an FYI for you. Also take note, the July meeting would have fallen on Independence Day holiday, so it will not be until July the 15th at 1 o'clock here in this same room. If nothing